Well, I'm continuing my series on rock facing and shaping stones, and today we're going to talk about how to use the point chisel because I got a lot of questions on that. This is a scallop chisel and this is a flat chisel. So we're going to show how they did these stones and we're going to recreate some of them. Here we go. When we're looking at these old buildings, you always see like a banding they call it, or a dressing, or a border. It depends on what country you are, where you're from. But they did this with a point chisel. This is called a Crandall Finish. And then they used a flat chisel to go around the sides like this. Now this stone that they usually chiseled is a lot softer than this stone. And here's an example of one I did to kind of mimic that. And we're going to go look at a couple other examples, then we're going to come back to this. We're walking up to the gates of this library and we're looking at the finish on it, and you can see they're all pop marks. This was done with a point chisel. Let's look at another example. We're walking up to a school in Scranton, and this is a good example. See how they used the point chisel? Now look at the difference between this mason who did this stone and this mason who did the stone and the next mason who did the stone. See, every mason had their own way of doing it, and unless you do this stuff, you don't really notice it. Now we're walking up to a corner of a building. This is between here. Now this is a real fine. This is the border stone, and this is the Crandell Finish up in here. And you get up here, we'll have a machine finish. We'll talk about that. This is the sample I made that kind of matches that building in Scranton. And it's not perfect, but I just used a point chisel. Now, depending on the guy that's doing it, he might use a duller one, or he might use a pointier one. On those big railroad jobs, which we're going to look at, they use these heavy-duty ones. If you're doing this stuff, don't listen to them about they don't know how the Egyptians did it. You could just get a regular rock and do that. That's how you get a Crandell Finish. You can see what I'm talking about. So don't listen to them when they're telling you all that Egyptian stuff. I got enough videos on that in my pyramid videos. And then we're going to go into modern practical masonry, and we're going to see how they did it that way. So let's stick with this for a while. I'm going to show you how I did this, and then we'll have Wayne do it, who was a carver. He's going to do it with a pneumatic tool. So here we go. Now let's just say we're going to do what they call a Crandell Finish. And we're going to do something fancy here. We're going to make a couple marks just to kind of square everything off in case we wanted to do that band thing. So we got our lines here. I'm going to duplicate that a little bit. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to get a flat chisel and just follow the line so not to lose that line. And that'll keep that Crandell Finish from going past that line into the other part of the stone. So let me finish that first. So we're going to continue on with our lines to make sure. Of course, I could have got a better stone, couldn't I? And what this is doing is when I make my marks, it's not going to go into that and chip that off. It's giving me room to go. Basically, I got my line going all the way through. Now we're going to have a point chisel, but they also got these flat chisels. And it depends on what you want to use. You got to kind of play around with it, see what you want. I don't think that's it. I think that's it. See? Kind of work. You work from the outside in. Then if you crack something, it's not going to goof that finish up on the end. And you keep going. If you did it all the time and every day, you'd be pretty fast with it. I'm continuing on, and you see that line I put there? When I get close to that line, it's not going to go past that line. That's why I put that line there. Now if I wanted to and go deeper with these sides, I could get these sides down. I could get a flat chisel and take them down even farther so that you get a different feel there. You see that? Then I'm not going in past that line. And that's how you do it. So I can't really see how well I did. I'm not going to win no trophies, but you can see how it's coming out there. Let's get some water, kind of wash it off. Get a little better vision of it maybe. Not too bad. Couple spots here and there. See, on top here, well, that's because the stone is a little dirty, but I just could keep going. That's what you call Crandell Finish. And if you wanted to drop this down on the bottom, right here, I don't want to get into that, but you would have to go a little deeper on the sides. And you'd have to draw a line and drop that, and that's how you would get that. See how I'm going deeper with that? That's a Crandell Finish. So it's not bad. I'm not a professional carver, but every stonemason has to basically know what goes on behind the scenes and what to do in case they got to fix it. Now let's go and see my friend Wayne Ferree, who is my go-to guy when it comes to carving.
I think that a lot of handwork was done back in the last the 20th century and before. A lot of handwork was done with just a hammer and a chisel. But I think that pneumatic tools have been being used for quite a long time, you know, quite a few decades, maybe even a century. And that's really the way to get production, is to use an air-driven hammer. Okay, that's also a Crandall Finish, but it's done with a different tool. This is the only thing that I really have available for right now, and it's a point. But usually, as I said, they were done with a sharper point, probably not as pointed as this. This kind of digs into the stone and makes sort of a hole. So I think usually the tool was probably a little more blunt than this one here. Another tool that was used for Crandall Finish is what's called a bush hammer, or a bushing tool. And they had teeth on them that were pyramid shaped. There could be 4 to 9, sometimes more. But this fits into the hammer, and you just hold it on the surface of the tool, and it kind of does the work for itself. Okay, we talked about Crandall Finish, and there's different ways to create a Crandall Finish, but it's basically just plucking pieces of stone off a flat surface to give the stone a texture.
We're in front of this old railroad bridge. Used to be a bridge go across here, but all these stones are flat, and to flatten them out, they used to use a point chisel. So we're going to go on top. This is all pre-made, and we're going to see how they kind of used it. Now we're on top of this old railroad bridge, and it's kind of windy, but I want you to see the top of the stones. If you look at the top of the stones, let's go this way. If you look at the top of these stones, they all got pot marks in them. You go up to this stone, you can see the pot marks, and the pot marks Here's some more stones. As we go up, you see all the pop marks. It's not called a Crandell Finish, but when they wanted to get into the stone and take pieces off, that's how they would flatten the top of a stone off. Just like that. That's where you get these pieces. See? You get the knoll, that's a little high. You take that off. Just like that. Now we're looking at some stones they put around a sign. And you can see that these stones came from an old railroad bridge or something. And you can see where they used the point chisel. Over here, they used the point chisel. Not so much here, but as you get over here, you can see the points where they use the point chisel. So again, see this is a little high, this point. We want to take it off. We use the point chisel. That would take that off like that. See? That's where they would get those marks when they're working on these stones. See, it takes it down over here. You want to take this top off, use the point chisel. Right there, take that off, use the point chisel. So we can see this stone has a high spot. See those high spots? Use the point chisel, you take those high spots out. Like that, you see? That's how they do that. That's why you see the lines when you look at these other stones. See, these are all done with point chisels. This is a conglomerate stone. You see the marks over here where they did the point chisels. Now let's talk about those stones that come out of a quarry. When you go to a quarry, they usually start a quarry with sandstone or bluestone or other types of stone where everything's flat. It actually comes out of the ground flat. So I did a video on a quarry a few years ago. We're going to go up and look at the quarry. Let me show you what we're talking about. They just blasted this a couple weeks ago. And you can see how all the stones are seamed. You see the seams of it? And they go right in there. You can see the seams over here. All this stone is seamed. So when they blast it down here, and then they take it and they put it in pallets and everything. But when you're a stonemason and you're coming and you've got a certain project, what you want to do is come and pick the stones out you want to use. Now this is a stone right here, has a good face in it. That has a nice face, but it's got to be worked a little bit. That's how we pick the stones out. So when we go to the quarry, all these stones come out of here seamed. When you go to a quarry, and I've done the videos before, you try to pick out a certain size stone that you're going to use for the wall. That's your choice stones. Then these other kind of stones like this, you work them until you get what you want. I showed you how to do all that on my, I think it was part 2. All right, so we know that. We could do that with a pitching tool. Now on a stone like this, we have a little knoll here. You see, that's pretty flat. When we get here, we got a knoll. So we could use the pitching tool like I did before, or we could get a point chisel. And that's going to take that knoll off, and you got to work it. See? You get that off. That's why, then you go this way. Watch me kill the camera. And you get the knoll off. And those guys who used to work with the stone, they say, why don't you use a saw? Well, they didn't have saws in those days. And those guys that make that stone more flat, in less time than you could go get a saw. You see the difference? It's even a little high here. Take that off. And that's the way they would do it. That's why when you look at those railroad stones and everything, they knew how to do it. And you'd see all those hot marks everywhere. That's what we do with stone that comes from a quarry like that. When it comes to limestone, it's a little different. You see, you cut those knolls out of there. You work a stone, you get good after a while. You know just how to hit that stone correctly. Now that flattened that stone out a lot better than it was. so you see where we're going. Now we have a piece of limestone, and we approach limestone a little bit different because we know we can get a butter knife like that and carve into it. No big deal. We know we can get a rock and bang it. But usually when you approach it, you use a tooth chisel, pitching tool, whatever you want. So I did a scene about Mason tools, part 5, chisels. Let's look at that. Now let's just take this piece of limestone and just let's say that we're trying to square it. You see that? We got this big knoll on top, right there, and that's got to come off. So all we got to do is we could take a pitching tool like this and drive into it. Sometimes it's a real hard knob on granite, so what we want to do is we want to get a point tool, and we point it out like that. See that? And we keep working that from side to side to side until, see, we're creating like little drags across it. See that? Just like that. And then after we use the point chisel, we might get what they call a tooth chisel, like this. This is a tooth chisel. And then it's easier to go through all that. You see that? Because we created valleys, and one valley will go one way, and the other valley will go the other way, and we keep going till we get that big knob out of there, just like that. And then once we get that off of there, we might want to get ourselves a flat chisel. See that? These are the flat chisels right here. I got a ton of them. And then you start working it with the flat chisel. Just like that. Until you get what you want. So this is all the stuff we're using for stone. Once you get that, you get yourself a file and you file it. Or, if you didn't have a file, if you were an Egyptian, you get another stone like this and you file it like that. So it's no big deal. And then you get your squareness of the stone. So that's it. I think I showed you enough about how the old timers would do it. Next video we're going to get into a scallop finish, they call it. And you can recreate it with this. Machine finish or a 6-point or scallop finish. You can see that on a lot of the old buildings. We're going to show you how they did that. I want to start recreating all these stones in one way or the other. When you work on a big stone job, a real stone job, it usually comes done by the quarry. But you as a mason have to know how to adapt it, make it fit, and cut it, and sometimes you have to learn to recreate a piece. So thanks for watching. We're going to start recreating these stones as I go through the series. I'm Mike Haduck, until I do another video.